Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us in one of the last sessions of Get Wiser Summit. And this marathon event is close to its end, and I want to congratulate Iman and Claire and all the organizational team for such a wonderful job they did over the last 3 days and provide us with such a nice space for joy and celebration. And I will start by telling you a little bit about the SHISIS program and why are we here this evening. And this is thanks to this program that was supported by the Open Society Foundation. And we were seeking to create a bridge between the high-level conference organizers and leading women social innovators and entrepreneurs in different fields with a gender sub-representation through this program. Last year, we started with a mapping of diverse conferences throughout Europe, and there were 300 conferences we looked at, and out of 12,000 speakers, only 30% of them were women. And the next step, it was to start building a community of experts and social entrepreneurs, women, who are, let's say, the next resource to include the 30%, to increase it to a larger percentage in the speakers of the next conferences of the next year. And at the beginning of the month, we had this community meeting. It was on the 8th of March, together with 50 of the 50 experts who joined, Ashoka Fellows, but also people from other fields. And we discussed on what's needed, what are the challenges, how can we overcome them? And one of the insights that was provided by Ivana, and I hope she's here with us tonight. Ivana is from the Czech Republic, one of the countries who showed the lowest representation of women. And she said, and I will just quote what she said, and this was like, mostly men socialize after events. Most women go to their room to work or to prepare for the next day. Overnight, while we all sleep and get ready for the next day, the job is already done by men over a beer. And while discussing these insights in the meeting, I realized that Elena Calistro, the one she's with us, she had joined probably many conferences and she had many beers after the conference. And she's definitely here to give us some more insights, and she can share with us experiences because she succeeded in a male's world, let's say, in a male's environment. And she stood there on her heels. And I would just ask her just to start introduce herself because it would be funny, and there are so many interesting things to discuss this evening, and I want just to let her take over the floor from now. So Elena, please tell us a bit about yourself and what you're doing.
Thank you, Ruxandra. Well, it's not actually beer. It's most of the times is a glass of wine, to be honest, and to be accurate. I love being accurate because one of the things my organization is doing is fact checking. So I need to be very precise. I run an organization called Funky Citizens. We are mainly active in the area of good governance. We're trying to promote civic engagement as something desirable, as something that people want to do on a daily basis, if possible. Like, you know, with physical movement, we're always saying that people should try to also get civically fit and to try to do something in this regards in their role as citizen on a daily basis. Other than this, in my professional life before the pandemic, and I'm now thinking of my professional life in terms of before and after the pandemic. Before the pandemic, I used to travel a lot and I used to attend a lot of conferences. One would joke that this is what I was doing most of the times. I disagree. I sometimes stayed in airports, which yeah, not the same. So yes, I attended many conferences in which I felt that staying afterwards at a glass of wine, a beer or something similar is also part of that conference. And it's actually one of the things that I am missing and hope to regain very soon.
Okay, when talking about this, again, talk about gender gaps, and but talking about gender gaps from this perspective of women's networking, it's what you're telling about. It's about all this networking that is an important part, and it's part of the conference itself and part of the travel. It's. Do you think this might be one of the elements that cause this gap persisting? It's the way we network as women, and it's only because, I mean, I'm just keeping in mind the fact that one of the first way that we were raised in a way that we should a career woman who works a lot doesn't have time enough to take care of the household, let's say, or women or girls are raised not to be so risk-taking. And my question is, how important do you consider this networking in your career? How did it help? And if you have some examples, this would definitely help us understand more. So.
Well, I actually started my organization from scratch, and previous networking really helped. It was actually crucial in my case, because I used to joke that in my at my previous work, I was a designated traveler, because I was the only one in the organization that didn't have children or didn't have a husband. So I wasn't supposed to stay at home too much. So I traveled before that as well. As a designated traveler, I benefited a lot from networking, but I also know that it is rather difficult to do this, to consciously invest in this part of attending conferences, mostly because this is another important point to make. I think that women are in general more, they are paying more attention to preparing for a meeting and being there and trying to be as ready as possible for any situation that might appear. One could say that it's because we feel less certain, or we need to compensate by trying to, be to know as much as possible and be in control. I always noticed that, or I sometimes noticed that women tend to work more at conferences and somehow be very present there, and get into whatever is done there with full energy. And I would say that it's also something that makes you really, really tired at the end of the day. So I don't know how many of us actually have the first of all, the energy to continue with networking after this. I've seen and I've experienced it myself many times. A lot of the participants to these events just looking forward to the end of the official agenda, so as to go do some extra work in the hotel room, or just drop dead and get some sleep at the end of the day, or catch up with some with the kids or with the family back home. So I would say that this is something important, but that we tend to not. I mean, I don't think we always tend to invest as much in it.
But do you feel that pressure, let's say, that you needed to improve yourself all the time and take care of the way you look and how prepared you are? And this was only because you're a woman, because we live in this stereotypical box, let's say. And did you feel this pressure, like, I have to prove that I'm better than? And this is something that takes more time and energy out of what would be, let's say, the regular?
I would say so. I mean, I remember one of the very first events I attended. I was very young. I think I was 23 or something like this. And it was a debate on a very serious topic. There were some changes to the criminal code at the Ministry of Justice back then. It was many years ago. And I remember that it was a public debate, and that I felt the need to prepare as much as possible, both from both thinking about the way in which I look physically, and as well as on the remarks and on the topics that were covered. And I remember going there and feeling like somebody thought that, I mean, the organizers or some of the people organizing the conference thought that I must be someone's secretary, and that I was sent there just to take notes. They were actually very surprised when I raised my hand, to have some remarks. And I also remember their surprise that I was quite articulate. And a bit of an overachiever. I overdid it for sure. But yeah, I think that most of the times I don't know if everybody is experiencing this kind of a stereotype beforehand, or if we actually encounter it, or we are just expecting it. But I felt it numerous times that I need to do more. I need to prepare more, because otherwise people might think that it's not my place to be there.
Exactly, talking about it, what are the main stereotypes you have to face because you're a woman, because you look good, because you're nice, you're smart, and what are these, let's say, top 3 stereotypes you have to face?
How much time do we have? Yeah, I think that, I mean, it of course it depends on the country and on the culture of that country. It's not always the same, of course, but one of the most common stereotypes is related to the actual topics that you can cover. For example, it happened to me so many times to be the only woman around in groups or events or conferences related to, for example, tech. Even though I'm not a tech person, but my organization is covering, also has, I mean, we're a civic tech organization to a certain extent. So we do use a lot of digital platforms, digital tools, and so on and so forth. And we work with a lot of data. And there are groups, including now, I'm in this group in which I am the only woman. And like, why? So one of the stereotypes is this one, related to topics which are for men and topics which are for women. Other topics are related to what is happening afterwards. Sometimes it's really funny because you get to have a privileged status. It happened to me many times to be the only woman at the beer after the conference, and I must say that most of the times my fellow attendees of the conference were like really nice, and they were like, let me give you a drink and so on.
Is this the last sign of recognition that you received, being invited at a beer after, probably? So.
At one point, I invited myself in some of these places, but
that's a good lesson for all of us.
Yeah, but I don't think it's actually a problem. I mean, most of the times it's not the problem with the guys excluding women, but I think it's, at least in my experience, again, I think it's also about us trying to avoid these things.
So it's more of a self-exclusion we practice, and it comes from education. What do you think? I mean, where do you think it comes from?
We just have work to do.
Okay. So it's just the way we perceive our work. So it's about where we consider it ends, or the standards we put on top of. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily about education, but if you get to think about many of the ways in which we perceived the events, even I don't know, the movies and the books, they're all full of situations in which you have this big party, and at a certain point the women and the children leave the party and men talk about serious business. Yeah, I'm sure that in some circumstances we're talking about education and about cultural traits and so on and so forth. But I would say that it's more sophisticated and it's more complex. I don't think it's always about such common traits in all these situations, especially in my world where people are quite open most of the times, or they are very aware of the need to be inclusive and so on and so on.
Just about stereotypes, the next question is on challenges. What was the main challenge you have to face over the last 10 years, let's say? And who are your allies, let's say?
If there, I mean, there are always challenges. There are always common challenges for social entrepreneurs. That's for sure. So I won't bother you with those. But I think that there is a gender dimension to the challenges we face. Because, for example, I think that women have more issues, or they're less comfortable with asking for funds, directly asking for funds when fundraising for an idea. And I think that this is a major difference, and it's always a challenge. One of the ways in which I I didn't yet do this, but anyways, a way in which I am trying my best to not to be affected by this is to actually focus more on competitive grants, for example. I know that it's a way of staying in a comfort zone, but I think it's always a way in which I am feeding that little monster that says you're not good enough, you shouldn't expect any preferential treatment and things like that. So when you're actually going for competitive grants at the very beginning, you have this challenge somehow mitigated, at least to a certain extent, and then you can take the next step. Another challenge is, yes, this one related to you being the only woman in the room. I sometimes hear my colleagues as well that they are they feel like they are not speaking loud enough in actually speaking loud enough in a meeting, especially if it's on a complicated or contentious topic. They tend to feel like their voice is not loud enough, and if they are just men, they will be louder. They will be heard more especially by a decision maker. I remember a colleague of mine. She was at her first meeting with some fellow colleagues from the civil society and 3 politicians, and they were talking about some changes to possible changes to the constitution. So a heavy topic, right? And she called me after this meeting, and she told me that, I felt like I was invisible at some point. At the beginning, it was fine because we all introduced ourselves and we discussed we had our interventions in line, so everything was okay. But at a certain point, when we went into a open discussion, I felt like I'm no longer able to make myself heard. And I think that her impression was also, I resonated with what she was saying, because I know that this is something that happens quite often. On the other hand, at least in my experience, this is a challenge you overcome in years. I don't have a recipe for it, but I know that it's about trusting yourself. It's about experience, and it's about preparation and being good at what you're doing. Right now, for example, I think it would be really difficult to have me in an event and keeping me quiet. I tend to speak of, that's my default mode at this point, and I sometimes ask myself if I'm exaggerating, but I think it's also a way of compensating many times or many situations in which it was the other way around.
Going with, let's say, in conferences or meetings where women were minority, do you feel this sense of support that women provide to each other? I mean, do they cluster and support each other, or it's just like everybody's on their own? That's it.
Again,
your experience again.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's about clustering. Again, I might be fortunate because at least in some of the places, at least in the civil society, and in the conferences that are happening in my area of work, people are not, are rarely clustered in themselves. So I mean, it's not so. It's not something that happens. But yeah, I wouldn't say that there is a support system in this regards, even though there are some women which begin to be aware of this, and men that begin to be aware of this. So you sometimes have support systems, but I think that for a lot of people this is still a topic of rolling your eyes kind of topic. I mean, you see people saying that, oh yeah, of course I forgot about it, and like they know it would be nice, and that this is how you do it now with the gender equality thing. But yeah, it's like it's difficult. So yeah, this is one of the reasons for which I must say that I'm one of the fortunate persons that are usually called to ensure to various panels to ensure some sort of a gender balance, because I can tick 2 boxes, still rather young and a woman, and
you bring your heels.
Yeah, I wear high heels, and if it's a European context, I usually also that box with Eastern Europe. So it's like I feel like I am sometimes in some of this at some of these discussions just to ensure gender balance, and I sometimes joke about it because I'm not so good with my, I have many other qualities. The sense of humor is not one of them. So I always have this joke prepared that, hi, I'm Elena, and I'm here to ensure gender balance. People are not even laughing at some points because they don't even, it might be my delivery, but sometimes it's also because they're not even aware of it, and so they don't get the punchline. Yeah.
Probably making them more comfortable. You can remind them that you can tick 2-3 boxes. Let's say it's diversity, it's expertise, and I also I look my hair. It looks nice today. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so talking about heels, this is something that I know that you like heels, and I know that more of an object of fashion. Let's say high heels are also symbols of power and wealth, and we know this. And historical data, and it was quite interesting while reading who were the first to wear heels, and they were men, and that was definitely a question of power, and they have to be tall in order to impress the others. It was politics on heels, but you're definitely the one promoting those activism on heels. So just tell me a bit about power politics associated with high heels. And it's not only Romania, so it's definitely international. So
Yeah, I don't know. I just love wearing high heels. No, I'm short. I'm really, really short.
okay.
um, and yes, it is. It is a question of power, and actually, it's a question of posture. And I think that this is also important. It somehow forces you to keep a straight body and a straight face while entering a room. But yeah,
And it's feminine power.
yes, and to a certain extent, it's of course uncomfortable, and it's a good reminder that you weren't supposed to get too comfortable in some situations. But yeah, I believe that it is a way in which I'm not so good at symbols and at analyzing all the implications of wearing high heels. But I know that at least in my case, while adding this hashtag with activism on heels, I'm always I started doing this while I was going to protest in the streets, and I was actually trying to let many other people know, and especially other women know, that those things are important, and it's not just about some the crazy activists that are throwing Molotov cocktails, and those are the only ones that are no offense to Molotov cocktails activists, but this cliche that yes, you have just these violent people that are throwing stones and screaming at the government. I think that civic engagement and actually protest is also about regular people, regular women, going there and shouting sometimes, or just being there. So in my mind, it was about this, about the fact that we often have cliches about who are the ones protesting, while in reality we're more diverse, and we're very different from the cliches.
And we should definitely let all the world knows this diversity in activism. This is networking versus relationship building. What do you think about? Some people praise a relationship, and they said that regardless the sector, this is the new solution to their problem, because there were many years when people were talking and focusing on networking, but now the focus goes more, and it's more meaningful to create powerful relationship. What do you think about it? And by looking at your experience, looking at your daily activities, daily business, let's say.
I'm really bad with weather talks. So I would definitely prefer relationships and building um, something that goes beyond mere networking. On the other hand, what I can tell you for sure is that the longest lasting partnerships developed are those that started with networking, including, for example, I was just finishing earlier a talk with it was one of the few Zoom calls in which nobody was bothered. I mean, we finished our conversation just because we had to go into another one, and it was with colleagues from Hungary and Poland, with whom, I mean, I've met them years ago at the Personal Democracy Forum, this conference in Poland, but we built, so it was a networking event. By the way, one of the best ones. So if you're into civic tech and democratization and all this jazz, do try to go there. But yeah, I mean that that's transformed into a long-lasting partnership because we had common interests, and because the networking opportunities were recurrent. So we did not meet just once and have the chit chat and exchange some business cards. No, we had this common place to go to and common discussions to have several times, and we had several beers afterwards. Too many sometimes. I'm kidding, but yeah, the Personal Democracy Forum also has these amazing parties every time.
The networking.
Yeah. That's a very it's one of the highlights of the event. But yeah, I mean, the recurring meetings and the recurring networking events actually led to many long-lasting projects and partnerships, and I think it's I mean, it's always like this with networking. It's just like fishing. You can't catch fish if you're not actually fishing, so you cannot build relationships outside your already existing ones if you don't go networking.
Yeah, but it's not enough to go networking only. Yeah. So it's in the follow-up you're doing afterwards. It's not only in meeting people. But I would like your advice, let's say, for those who are not so experienced with the conference. How to come out of the box, how to act, how to behave at your first conference, what to do there. Is there any tips or tricks that you might give us, especially for the young ones, let's say, who start their activity? Okay, unfortunately, in this pandemic era, one is not so fun because we all had enough
fortunately
boxes on screen, but
because it can be scary.
Let's prepare for the good times. And so one piece of advice: when you are there, you're scared, you're alone, and you know that your shirt is not perfect and nobody will see you and you are totally invisible to everyone else, but you still have to be there and you still have to do your job. I don't know to whom I can talk. I don't know what I can say. How should I start?
Well, you can start with, throwing some water or some coffee on someone, but that's it's not a good icebreaker.
That's the hardcore approach.
But in my opinion, the best thing you can do is to actually start a conversation during the event or during the conference or whatever it is, by asking a question or having an intervention, because most of the times there will be people that will be intrigued by what you asked, and they will try to also maybe kickstart a conversation starting from this. And this is also something that you can do as well. Just go, talk to someone that asked the question, say, hey, I liked your question. Why are you interested in this? This can be a good starting point, but I am a geek, so I'm usually actually interested in the things that people ask. So I'm always like, let's talk more about budgets. Sure, why not?
Okay, now I have the really hard question after this. It's how do we socialize when we are stuck at home like now?
So you don't. I'm kidding. I was actually surprised to see that many people try to, many people understand that there is this need. On the other hand, I had a few attempts to do some socialization on Zoom. I totally hate that. I think it works just with people that you are already comfortable with, and that's fine. I think you shouldn't put pressure on you. I think that it is really, 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 really difficult to do so with people that you've never met before. It might be interesting if you're into a very technical thing and you start discussing about other issues as well, but I think it's really, really hard. And I think that the Zoom fatigue and the screen fatigue is real, and I think it makes us really impatient, and I think you risk destroying somehow or starting a relationship on the wrong foot. But maybe that's just me. However, what I learned is that talking over the phone or doing some of this, old school, if you can call talking on the phone old school, but at least in my case, it's like a break. And I feel like whenever I'm talking to someone on the phone, like I used to do before the pandemic, it actually helps with socializing. So yeah, just give someone a call from time to time, just like randomly call someone.
I fully embrace this old school, like just calling someone. And I also find myself starting to practice it on the last days. But yeah, probably this, especially we discussed about relationships, and I think this is the time when we harness the power of the relationships we built prior, and we just stay together even though it's more and more complicated. But now that we're talking about advices, again, we ask you for another one. What would you say to someone that she's really nervous because she will be the single speaker in a conference? And what would be the piece of advice going there? So is this one single woman going there?
It happened to me many times. And besides the joke that I already shared with you, that I am there for the gender balance, I think that an important thing to consider is that you are there. So at the end of the day, nobody would actually call you just for the gender balance. Or I hope so. Or to, I mean, most of the people would not call someone just because they want to make a point in this direction. So
or to make the next joke, it would be like someone who won't talk so much. So
exactly. So I think that you should just, use the opportunity, even though there might be, at some point I was at this meeting. It was a business association. It was an evening, and we were talking about, I think, about budgets or something like this, something a hardcore topic, economies, something like this. And it was just me, and then there were 3 other male speakers, and one of them was also a member of the Romanian Academy. The other one was a professor, and the other one, I don't remember what it was, maybe a journalist appearing on TV on a daily basis. So I was like, tough one, man. What I noticed is that if you add to the, and this happens quite often, if you add to this to the gender dimension also the authority dimension, you'll probably you don't risk, but you can find yourself as a woman, and as a woman feeling really, really small in some of these panels. So my advice would be to notice that you are there and talk to the public, and understand that this is an opportunity to have your voice heard, and just do your thing.
Your thing. Thank you very much. So the last topic, and we are already close to the end. Fact, and it's the Global Gender Gap Report 2020. It tells us that it will take another 100 years to achieve gender equality based on the current rate of progress. Okay, it's funny, but it's something for the next generation, actually. So, two questions. The first one is, what do you consider to be a significant factor that would speed up this process? Because these 100 years were induced somehow more on the pandemic and what happened. So, if there would be one factor, one tiny factor that would speed up everything, what do you think that one would be?
Beer. I don't know. No, I'm kidding. I think that it has to do with at least three things. First of all, it has to do with acknowledging that this is a problem that is getting worse. Then finding ways to no longer feel guilty as a woman, or maybe reminding women that they should not feel guilty for many of the things that are happening to them these days. And the third one would be to actually make a conscious effort, or to invite as many people as possible to make a conscious effort in this direction. I remember last night I finished my last call at 9:20 p.m. And someone was writing in the chat that this is like horrible. You cannot do this. It's like we were talking about life-work balance and the way in which the pandemic affected us. And I think that we should take note of this exasperation and of the fact that many of us no longer can no longer take this as a fact. I mean, we need to at least talk about it as much as possible.
And okay, because we were discussing the 100 years, and this is probably something for the next generation. What will be this one single positive change you would like to create for women that will come after you? You will be remembered for making activism funky, let's say. But
yeah.
What other change you would do? A positive one?
Well,
for women, because the activism, it was for all of us, but for women,
I might want this dimension. I mean, I think that activism is in many ways not gender neutral, and I think that in my quest for making it more mainstream, getting it closer to women and convincing us more women to have their voices heard and be powerful and to be prepared to interact with the authority, whether the authority is an authority in the real sense of the word, like a politician, or if that authority is just an older man. It's rather the same, in my opinion. I mean, as a citizen and as a woman, as an individual, I think you should feel worthy of having a conversation or to be an equal partner in a conversation with power. And I think that it does, even though it's not specifically targeting women, what I am doing is in general, and let's say hopefully more resounding to women.
Thank you very much. And we are right on time. We arrived at the end of our 45 minutes. I hope it was fun, not only for us, but also for the ones who watched us. And thank you very much, Elena, for everything that you shared with us.
Thank you as well.